now thinking about what did she get herself into. But she's a very, very special guest. We've spoken about her before on the show many times, actually.
Quite a few times.
The last time was not too long ago.
Yeah.
We were talking
The
about
zone of interest. We're talking about the
Zone of interest.
Yes.
That's why we got to
Yes, and we were like, the book that you read, it was called An Afro-Caribbean
In the Nazi.
There we go, in the Nazi era, from Papiamentu to German, written by Miss Mary Romney-Schaab, and she is here with us in the studio. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning. It's a great honor and an enormous pleasure to be here with all of you this morning.
Yes, good to have you here.
It's good
Thank
to
you
finally meet you.
Well, it's my honor and my great pleasure, and I thank you very, very sincerely for this wonderful opportunity and for the invitation. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for actually writing this book. You know, I'm a big fan of history.
Wow,
And,
that's great.
Yeah, so a while back, a long time ago, you was here for a book fair. I mean,
Yes,
a
I
while
was.
back.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
No, I'm talking about before that, quite a while. You, I don't know if you was here, but our ex-coworker Phyllis,
Right.
this was actually pre-Irma, and she went to, I don't know if it was a book fair or something, and she came back.
Presentation.
A present. You was here for that?
Yes.
So she told me about this book, about this lady, she wrote a book about her father, who's from St.Maarten and was in a concentration camp in Germany. And I was like, what? I was like, she was like, yeah, it was really interesting. And I was kind of upset at her because she didn't tell me about it. She didn't invite me to the class. I was like, I would love to hear this story. So then some odd years later, I think I was in Van Dorp downstairs, and I saw the book or something, and then I bought the book.
Wow.
And then I read the book,
Great.
and then I was like, wow, I was blown away. And then I think Ralph was talking about it or something, or I told Ralph about it, and then he went to go see you. He took my book, he read my book, you signed my book, actually. There you go. And now you're here, you're back again.
I am. I came back for the book fair this year.
Okay.
But I understand that it was
That got postponed. I heard that Tuesday they postponed it.
Yes, yes, it's been postponed.
Okay.
So you're now just doing nothing on island. Just kidding. You're like, oh, Drax.
Just chilling.
Spending time with people like you.
Okay.
I really enjoy.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, the way she said
That's
it.
an excellent expenditure of my time.
Okay.
I can tell you that. Yes.
In her tone, it's a good thing. If we said it,
Now, how's the feedback been, after this book came out and people actually learned about, that we actually had someone from the Caribbean in a concentration camp?
Well, the reactions are all the same as what you just said. People say, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. How is that? And that was my initial reaction when I first found that my father was in the concentration camp. I couldn't believe it. I was totally incredulous. But in terms of how people have received the book, as far as I can tell, it's been unanimously positive. Wherever I've gone, I've presented the book in this country. I've presented the book in the United States. I've done it in Europe. And unanimously, people are very interested and they react in a very positive way to the book, in many positive ways.
But you have to find out that not only a Caribbean man, but a St.Maarten man. Born, raised St.Maarten man.
A Romney.
Was
Romney.
in a concentration, in one of the most notorious concentration.
Not just any concentration.
Not just any concentration
That's
camp.
right.
One of the most notorious concentration.
And he survived.
And he survived.
And he survived. So
can I just say?
Sure.
Can I just mention why it was one of the most notorious? It was the only concentration camp in the entire concentration camp system that was specifically designated to work its prisoners to death. There were different types of concentration camps. There were death camps, also known as extermination camps, like Auschwitz. That was one of those. There were labor camps. There were prison camps. There were women's camps. There were transit camps. There were all different types of concentration camps. And the number of concentration camps, I've read estimates ranging from about 2,500 all the way up to 15,000. So there were thousands of concentration camps. And the only one in the entire concentration camp system that was specifically designated to work as prisoners to death was Mauthausen. And that is where my father was imprisoned.
And they had the infamous stairs of death.
That is exactly what they had.
If you can explain that to the people what that was?
Yes. The stairway of death was the stairway leading down into the quarry. The concentration camp at Mauthausen was constructed because of a quarry. It sat on top of the largest granite quarry in Austria. And the Nazis built a concentration camp there so that they would have a captive labor force to quarry the granite and extract the stones. So that's why they built the concentration camp there. So through a combination of starvation, torture, and hard labor, that was how they wanted to kill the prisoners at the concentration camp.
So they had these big, giant quarry boulders that they had to carry.
That's right.
And walk up these steps.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And the steps were actually, there's no railing. So if you fall over the steps, that's it. You lose your balance.
Yes.
You're done.
And that is how a lot of people died.
Correct.
And that is why it was called the Stairway of Death. Also because, as I say, the prisoners were starving. So their bodies were extremely weak. And their bodies could not tolerate the stress of carrying 110 pounds of granite on their backs up 186 steps on the Stairway of Death.
Crazy.
So that is how a lot of people died, and that's why it's called the Stairway of Death.
Wow.
Now, that being said, my father was not assigned to work in the quarry, and that is one reason why he survived.
Was another reason why he survived was because of he knew the Dutch language?
It was because of all the languages he knew. Now, prisoners with language skills were often allowed to live longer than other prisoners because they could be used as interpreters.
Right.
So my father had English and Dutch as native languages, and then he had German because of the similarity to Dutch.
The Dutch, right.
And then he had lived in Curacao and Aruba, so he had Papiamentu. He lived and worked in Venezuela, so he had Spanish, and that was easy to learn because of the Papiamentu.
Right.
Then, of course, he was a prisoner in Italy for 4 years before being interned in the concentration camp. So when he went to Italy, he could understand everything immediately because he knew Spanish. So being there for 4 years, he learned Italian as well. So he had English, Dutch, German, Papiamentu, Italian, and Spanish. So he one of his nicknames became the interpreter.
Yeah.
Wow.
While he was in the concentration
He had another
camp.
nickname too. They used to call him the Germans.
Yeah, they called him Jumbo because he was tall. Yeah.
For those who don't know, how did your father get into the? How did
I was just going to ask. So, how does a guy from St.Maarten
get
captured? Because I know G told us once that in this era you used to have a lot of German U-boats as well in Statia and everything.
And Aruba.
So is that how he got caught, or was it somewhere else?
He was already in Europe when he got caught. Here's what happened. He was working as a sailor on cargo ships.
A merchant marine.
He was a merchant marine. So he happened to be on a ship that was sailing from Wales to Greece through the Mediterranean. And when that ship reached the area between Tunisia and Sicily, it struck a mine. It struck a floating mine, which, as you know, is an explosive device. So when it struck the mine, it sank. But that ship and the entire crew was rescued by a ship from the Italian Navy. And that is how my father became a political prisoner in Italy. So for the next 4 years, that happened in 1940. So for the next 4 years, he was a prisoner in Italy, and he was transferred through a series of internment camps in Italy. And then the Germans came through, let's say around 1943, something like that. They came through, and they took all the prisoners from the Italian system, and they distributed them among the concentration camps. So by 1944, they got to the camp where he was. That final camp where he was interned in Italy was the largest transit camp in the Italian system. So the Germans always took prisoners from there. So my father just happened to be deported to Mauthausen. It just happened. I mean, it wasn't entirely coincidental. The Jewish prisoners were all taken to Auschwitz, or mostly taken to Auschwitz, and the other prisoners were taken to different concentration camps, and they just happened to take him to Mauthausen.
Right.
What was the movie you just said that we watched?
Zone of Interest.
Did you watch the movie Zone of Interest?
No.
Please watch the movie Zone. It's about
Amazing
Auschwitz.
movie.
It's a very amazing movie, and
I've heard about it.
It was nominated for an Oscar.
Yes,
and it
that's
won an
right.
Oscar.
Best sound.
Because the sound is amazing.
Yeah.
So if you ever get a chance, really check it out. It's
I
amazing.
definitely
'Cause
will.
You can correlate with it.
And there's barely any dialogue, but it's because of the soundtrack of the movie, which basically paints a picture of everything that's going
Which took
on.
them 2 years to make.
Yeah.
2 years to make the soundtrack for the movie. So Zone Adventure is very. You actually learned about your father being in a concentration camp much later in your life.
That's right.
Because your father never spoke about this.
That's exactly right.
Can you explain how this came about?
Well, actually, before we get to that, your father, no one even knew your father was alive all this time, right?
That's exactly right. His family here in the Caribbean didn't know. They didn't know because he had no way of communicating with them. He tried, but
from the time that the ship sank with the mine,
or before that,
even too, maybe
I would say so. Yeah.
There was no Facebook, Super.
True. There was no cell phone.
Yo, I'm in a German prison camp.
Don't get me. Send money.
Get me out of here.
Get out of here.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine the world in the pre-internet era.
Yeah.
But people actually used to do something called writing letters. They used to sit down with a paper or a pen and a pencil, and they actually used to sit down and write. And he did try that. I think he did, but that would have been back in 1930. I would say no later than 1939, 1940. Probably 1939 might have been the last letter he wrote.
Wow.
But I don't even know that he did. In that year.
Right.
But so they had for 6 years they really had no way of knowing whether he was alive or not. So when he got out and he was able to leave Europe, then he was able to contact his family.
The first place the phone call he made to was Staten Island, New York.
Yeah, that's right.
Where I'm from.
Wow, you're from Staten Island.
Yeah, so I was kind of, when I saw that in the book, I was like, oh, he called his family in Staten Island.
After 6 years, you remember that number?
Concentration camp, you remember a lot of things. You got a lot of time to think.
True.
Yeah. So going back to my question, how did you, like I said, later on in your life, I don't know how old you was, but when you first found out that your father was actually in a concentration camp, how did that come about?
Yeah, well, I found out when I was 15, but he didn't talk about it until I was in my 40s.
What?
Yeah. So I spent over 20 years trying to pull the story out of him because I wasn't supposed to know that it happened. I couldn't let him know that it happened, and I knew that
your mom told you, right?
She did, but he only spoke to her about it very, very briefly, and he just didn't give her very much information at all. So she gave me the little bit that she had, and she said he doesn't want to talk about it, so you cannot ask him, and you can't let him know that I told you. So you have to be very careful with this. So I didn't let him know that she told me. I didn't ask him directly, but I tried to paint him into a corner. But it didn't work. I tried for over 20 years.
And you were born after he came back, or?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is after.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I was. He came. Well, the war ended in 1945. Yeah. And he met my mother in New York sometime around 1947, 1948, something like that. They got married in 1950, and I was born in 1952.
They moved to Massachusetts, right?
My mother was from there, but they always lived in New York City, which is where I was born. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I tried for a very long time. Now, the reason for his silence was that he was in trauma. He was very deep in trauma. I have learned that silence is the voice of trauma. A lot of trauma victims remain silent, many of them, if not most of them, for their entire lives. So it's difficult to get a trauma victim to speak about their trauma. However, when they do, it's an extremely liberating experience for most of them. And I feel that all of that pain was in him, and it needed to come out. And so I feel that when he started talking, the reason why he never stopped talking about the war after he started was that that trauma, just all the pain needed to emerge, and it just took a very long time for it to emerge. So we did that oral history. I recorded everything that he said about it.
And you did video, right? I
did video. So my oral history is on video, and that's the basis of the book. And he never stopped talking about it after that. I mean,
really?
He never did. I mean, and that's why that my oral history is, relatively extensive because I recorded everything he said over a period of years.
Were there some stuff that you recorded I know your father saw a lot of atrocities.
Yes.
That you left out the book.
Yes. There was one that I left out.
Okay.
There were, and I think a lot has been left out of the book simply because he didn't say it. I don't think that he told me everything that he experienced. I don't think that he told me about all the atrocities.
Do you think it's because he didn't remember, or he just didn't want to tell you?
I think he just didn't want to shock me anymore.
Oh, okay.
And I think maybe it was avoidance, but I don't think it was that he didn't remember. I hesitate to say that it was because he didn't remember. I don't think he could have remembered absolutely everything, but the level of detail to which he penetrated when he did describe what he witnessed was such that I feel that he remembered most or almost all of what he experienced. So I don't think it was because he forgot. So there might have been some avoidance in there.
Around how old was he when he started to tell you everything? Around what was his age?
Well, the first time we ever had a conversation about it was at the end of 1989. So let me see, he was born in 1912. So what was that, 77?
77 years old.
Yeah. And then I didn't get back to him and start recording on a regular basis until about 5 years after that. Oh. So most of my
oral... 80s.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So most of my oral history, almost all of it really, well, let's say most of it, is from 1995 until he passed in 2004. Yeah.
So he was the one willing to tell you, because I'm sure you kind of kept asking him, and then one day he said, "You know what? I think I'll tell my story." And then how was it after that? Was he the one that got in contact with you? Hey, I remember this happened or that happened, or would you just sit around him and just like kind of, kept, just asking questions and then just writing and recording as it happened?
Yeah, both actually. It really didn't take very much provocation. It didn't take much encouragement for him to get him to talk. Sometimes we would just be sitting in silence, the two of us just looking out the window or something, and he would start talking, but he was in mid-sentence. So I know that it was going on in his mind, and he just, at one point or another, for some unknown reason, he just decided to verbalize what he was thinking. And so, sometimes he would start in mid-sentence, and it would be, everything was fascinating. Everything he said was fascinating. And I would say, okay, stop, be quiet. And I'd have to run upstairs, get the video camera, get a tape, get the extension cord, and set everything up. And then, that would always take about 10 minutes or whatever. Because in those days we were using tape.
Right.
True.
This was prehistory. Yeah. Right? This was back in the Stone Age. Yeah. So,
in the 1900s.
Yes. So, we were still using tape and, these clunky machines and everything. There were no cell phones at the consumer level in those days. So, we had no...
they had cell phones. They didn't have video cameras on them.
No.
That's exactly. But they didn't have cell phones.
Oh, no, they didn't have it yet.
Not even that.
Oh, wow.
Not even that.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it was prehistory.
True.
So, these are prehistoric times. So, the point I'm trying to make is that, sometimes he would just start voluntarily, and other times, when he was talking, I would write questions. I didn't interrupt him. So I would write questions. Just let him go. And I would write questions. And then the next time I would see him, I would ask him some of the questions. Sometimes he answered them, sometimes he didn't. He always responded, but he didn't always answer the questions.
Right.
So it was a
combination. He did like a Sarah Westcott, didn't really answer the question.
Went a whole other direction.
Didn't really answer the question. He answered it, but he didn't really answer it.
Now when he was, relaying his experiences, could you tell based on his answers or his emotions that it affected him, or was he just, like you said, it could have been liberating for him, so it felt pretty good for him to tell you these things, or did you see him kind of like,
like being hesitant?
Right.
Yeah. There was not really any hesitation. I mean, that's why I say, you know, once he started, he didn't stop.
Right.
I think he just needed to come out of him.
I think he wanted to tell people his story.
Yeah.
Like, this is my story. People need to know what I saw, what I went through.
He didn't want an audience per se. You know,
no.
he only wanted to tell me.
Correct.
He didn't really talk about it to anybody else.
I can imagine, no, right?
I mean, if they asked him, he did.
Yeah.
But he didn't
Go into
volunteer.
detail.
You know, he didn't volunteer information to anybody else, and I don't know why that was. But
You're his daughter.
yeah. I mean, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
One of the most incredible things in the book that I read is that you and your husband went to Mauthausen to see the concentration camp that your father was in, and you had a rough time. I read in the book that the first time you and your husband went, you couldn't even make it in. You had to go back the next day. You want to talk about that a little?
Oh yeah. You know, the thing about trauma is that it can be intergenerational. It can be passed from generation to generation. And just as a brief digression, I feel that is what has happened to us as African diaspora people. I feel that we are still experiencing some of the trauma that our ancestors have experienced as enslaved people, as oppressed people, etc. Now, where the Holocaust and the Nazi era are concerned, that trauma has been known by psychiatrists and psychologists and sociologists and all kinds of people to be passed down from generation to generation. Correct. Now, I didn't think that I was feeling that until I tried to walk into the camp, which, as you say, was an excruciating experience for me. That very first day, I could not bring myself to walk into that camp. I was
You kept finding
horrified.
Excuses not to go.
I kept finding excuses because it's a huge complex. And in those days, they had a visitor center on the outside, and they had a beautiful bookshop and a little cafe, and they had this, they had that. Plus, there's a huge area that's called the Memorial Monument Park, where every country in Europe and Israel and some other groups have monuments dedicated to their citizens who perished in the camp. So there are lots of things to do outside of the camp before you go in. So I was finding excuses to do all of those things, as I couldn't let my husband know that I didn't want to go in.
Wow.
So I was finding excuses not to walk in there because I was so terrified.
Because of all the things that your father told you.
But I didn't. That's not what I was
That's not
thinking.
even. Oh.
That's not what I was thinking. That was subconscious. That's why I believe it was subconscious. I don't know why I was terrified. I don't know what I was afraid of. But I was shaking like a leaf. I could not bring myself. I thought that if I went in there, that it would devour me and that I would die. Wow. I said, if I go in there, I'll die. I know I will. I cannot go in that camp. I cannot do it. And the main gate is, very big, very sort of intimidating. They let you in a small little door on the side, but I just couldn't face it. I don't know how I got myself to put that first foot over the threshold. I don't know how.
But you did it the next day?
No, the same day.
The same day?
Same day.
Oh, okay.
But after being there for about 5 hours.
Wow.
I could not bring myself to step in there. I was just so terrified. And I have no idea what I was terrified of, but I think that it was that subconscious trauma. Just, as you say, remembering what my father went through in that place and what tens of thousands of people went through in that place. And I mean, okay, about 90,000 people died there in that camp. But what about the ones that didn't die and that were tortured and starved? And I mean, there was so much suffering. Every prisoner in that place suffered. And I think at least 200,000 people were imprisoned there over the life of the camp.
Did you feel that energy though when you did finally step in?
No, I felt when I finally did step in, I almost almost felt liberated. I felt a relief. I didn't expect to feel that.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I said, how could I be feeling this?
Right.
But I just wanted to run around and see everything. I wanted to touch everything. I wanted to read everything because it's very well organized. It's
Are the stairs of death still there?
Yeah, they're still there. I walked
With
up and down.
railings this time or no? Still no railings?
No railings. I walked up and down the stairway of death every day. Every day that we were there, I said, I want to walk up and down the stairway of death. And I did it every day that we were there.
And there's actually...
it's a museum. The
right,
whole
but
thing
there's
is
actually a book with all the prisoners' names in it. Am I correct?
Yes, that's not all the prisoners, but all the ones whose deaths were registered.
Okay.
And that, so it has over 84,000 names in it. Because some people were killed without being registered. Because if they were very, very old or very, very young, if they could not be put to work, then they were not registered.
Okay.
But you did find your father's name in a book or something?
No, I didn't find my father. No, okay, I know what you're talking about. His imprisonment was registered because they were going to get work out of him. So it was registered in a lot of different places. Now, there was a manifest. He came over with a large group of Italian prisoners. So there was a prisoner manifest that had all the names of the prisoners in that shipment. And his was the only non-Italian name on the whole list. The list was many pages long, maybe 5 pages, something like that. So I have that.
Did they put like where he was from or something? They had
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
But what they didn't put St.Maarten. They put something else?
They put Santo Domingo.
Santo Domingo.
They put Santo Domingo because that was where he was born.
Right.
Yeah. Just like everybody in that generation. Or a lot of people in that generation.
True.
Yeah.
So because they use him as a translator, did he still have to do any type of work in the camp, or he was just solely used as a translator?
Yeah, that's another good question. He was put to work as a lumberjack. That was the work detail to which he was assigned.
So do you think that saved his life?
Oh, definitely. That and the translation skills. Oh, definitely. Because if they had put him to work in the quarry, there's a very good chance that he wouldn't have survived.
Now, a lot of people, like when we think of the Holocaust, of course, everybody remembers the Jewish people. But of course, there was over 5,000 blacks, or should I say African Americans, Afro.
Well, who knows? Because some of them were Afro-European, some of them were African, some of them were Afro-German, maybe some of them were African American, or definitely some of them were African American. I read about another Afro-Caribbean from somewhere in the French Caribbean, I can't remember, but he was a jazz musician, and his life was spared in another concentration camp. I don't remember where, but his life was also spared. Yeah.
And he was from where?
He was from somewhere in the French Caribbean, but I can't remember where.
Okay.
And he settled in France after the war.
So you have met other...
I didn't meet him. I read about him. Read about him.
Have you read about other people from the Caribbean in concentration camps?
No.
Wow.
That's very rare.
Wow.
That's very rare.
Very, very rare.
Yeah, there were about 50,000 black people who I believe actually perished in the concentration camp system. I believe that's the
That's something they don't talk about, or you don't hear about.
There you go.
You don't hear about that.
There you
In the movies that they show or anything, there were black people in concentration camps.
Yes, there were. And there were 6 million Jews who perished, but there were 5 million others who also perished in the concentration camps. And they were Roma and Sinti, formerly known as Gypsies. There were LGBTQ. They were Slavic peoples, Jehovah's Witnesses, communists, political opponents. I'm leaving out another group that I can't remember right now, but there were the population of those who were interned in concentration camps was very, very diverse. Very diverse population.
One thing that was interesting in the book is when the concentration camp was finally liberated by the Americans, and they saw your father. They were like, "Huh?
Oh, what are you doing here?"
They actually thought he was a U.S. Marine or something. They liberated the concentration camp, and then there's this black guy.
Yeah.
Oh, you must be one of us.
That's
No,
it.
I'm from
That's it.
St.Maarten.
Martin.
That's it. They didn't give him a chance to say where he was from.
Oh, wow.
They just assumed that he was one of them.
Wow.
And that was because there was, or I think it was mostly because there was an American, a U.S. Navy lieutenant. His name was Taylor. He was a Navy lieutenant who was captured and imprisoned at Mauthausen. And he knew my father.
Really?
He knew my father, and he assumed that my father was American. Now, I don't know why that is, because I don't think that he had like extensive conversations with my father. I think he was
Just because maybe he was very good with the English language.
that because it was clear that he was a native speaker of English.
Correct.
I think that is why the Navy lieutenant, the U.S. Navy lieutenant, thought that my father was American. Now, that being said, he should have caught the accent. He should have caught the
Maybe
accent.
he thought he was from the South. I don't know.
He must be from Alabama.
Yeah, right.
That accent, he got to be from Alabama.
Well, I attribute it to this. In those days, which was the 1940s, most white Americans were doing everything that they could possibly do to stay as far as away as they could from black Americans.
Right.
Correct.
So they didn't know anything about black people in general. So I
Or the
think
Caribbean.
that's what I think. I believe that they thought that the only English-speaking black people were all from the United States, because
Right.
the Anglophone Caribbean was not on their radar in those days. It was not on their
They
radar.
just probably knew about Cuba. Probably that's
Cuba,
about it.
but that
Yeah.
was
Jamaica.
Spanish
And
speaking.
Jamaica, yeah.
They
That's
didn't.
about it.
I don't
And
think
Haiti.
they
Probably not
did.
even-
I don't think they knew anything about
Jamaica.
Jamaica in those days.
Maybe
because it
Haiti
was-
and Cuba, but that's about it.
Maybe
Puerto Rico.
Haiti and maybe Puerto Rico. Okay, but it was clear that those were not English-speaking countries.
Right.
So I feel that since they didn't know anything about black people, maybe they thought that the only black people lived in Africa and the United States.
Yeah.
So I feel that, because they just were not conscious of the Anglophone Caribbean, they just assumed, or the lieutenant just assumed that my father was American because, as you say, it was clear that he was a native speaker of English. And I don't think that he had extensive conversations with my father.
Okay.
He might have just asked him like yes, no questions.
Correct.
My father responded, and because my father, I tried to get my father to talk about that lieutenant, and he said that he didn't say that they had extensive conversations. If they had, he would have talked about it. So I think that they had a very kind of superficial relationship.
You know how it is, like, you walk into a restaurant and there's all white people, you see that one black person in the restaurant and y'all give like the head nod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Like,
I see you.
I see you. Recognize. So your father, we said St.Maarten, your father. Where in St.Maarten was he from?
Upper Princess Quarter, the Hope Estate.
Hope Estate.
Okay.
And what did he do here growing up here in St.Maarten?
Well, I think, they left to go down to Curacao when he was still a teenager. So, they were down there for a few years.
So that's where the Papiamentu comes from.
Exactly. But then he also worked there in the refineries. He worked in Aruba and Curacao in the refineries, and Venezuela as well in the refineries. Lago. So, I feel that he didn't really... And then he started traveling. He started getting jobs in the shipping industry when he was still fairly young. He got, I think, there was some kind of a Dutch cruise line, and he got a job. I think still maybe as a teenager or
But
maybe
that
in
was
his
good
early-
money back then.
Yeah.
To work either the refinery or to work on the boats, the merchant marines.
right.
That was some good money.
Yeah. Well, what you say about the merchant marines is absolutely true. That's why he did it, because he needed to help support his parents, because his sister was taking care of the parents in Curacao. Curacao, and I think one of them was in maybe they were both in Curacao. I don't know, but he was trying to help his sister take care of the parents, and he also wanted to help his siblings because they were developing large families, and I think one of the parents ended up in Aruba, so he also wanted to send money there.
Okay.
He wanted to help the parents and the rest of the family, so he took a job going into the war zone. Well, okay, not the war zone, but going over to
overseas.
Going over to Europe when the war was starting, because there was more money
Over there.
Now, the ship that he took from Wales that was on its way to Greece, he was deceived into boarding that ship. He didn't board that ship willingly because the war had started and he was trying to get away from the war zone. He was trying to go back west across the Atlantic because the war had started. Yeah. But the shipping companies needed crews. They needed to find sailors to
and no one was willing to go that way.
Nobody was willing to go that way. So they had to deceive
the crew
to
let
and that is how he got on that ship because it doesn't make sense to get on a ship and going into the war zone.
Right.
And that's exactly what he was trying not to do. But so that was one of the cruelest ironies.
Is your mom still alive?
No, they're both
but she's from St. Maarten as well?
Her parents were.
Oh, okay.
Her parents were from
She's from New York, he said.
She was from Boston. But so her parents settled in the Boston area. They were both from St. Maarten, and they settled in the Boston area around the turn of the 20th century.
Wow.
And my mother was born in 1907.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now with all the information that you gathered from your father, from the things that you wrote and the video tapes that you got, what made you decide, okay, you know what, I need to put this in a book?
Yeah, I didn't think about it until I came home from Mauthausen after that first visit in 2006. I think I started thinking about a book around 2007, something like that. I'm not really sure. 2007, maybe 2008. I'm not really sure. But I felt that it was very important for me to share this. I felt that I could share it more effectively if it were in a book because it could be distributed more widely. But what I really wanted to do was to encourage other people in the African diaspora, especially in the Caribbean, to do the same thing with their elders. I want everybody, every family, I tell everybody I meet, strangers, anybody who will listen, I say, you should really do an oral history.
There's no future without the past.
There you go. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. You see, if you don't know your history, then you don't really know who you are completely. You'll never know that completely. Look, all of the powerful people in the world today and in history, throughout history, they have all known their history. All the powerful people today, they all know their history. They all write their history, and they all teach their history to their young people. Not only that, they make sure everybody else knows it.
True.
And that is one thing that will keep you in power, knowing your history. So what did they do to us in the African diaspora? The first thing they did when they enslaved us was to take away our language. Second thing they did was to take away our history. Third thing they did was to take away our music. If you don't have those three things, especially your language and your history, you become a blank slate. So then anybody can write anything that they want on that slate. So our slate has been filled with lies about us. We have never been in control of our own narrative. We as African diaspora people have never been in control of our own narrative. And that's one thing that has kept us in oppression.
Correct.
Now, where do we find our history? Well, I found out the hard way that a lot of our history is in the memories of the old people. Because when I used to come here with my father, first with my parents and then just with my father, I used to sit and listen to my father and Emilio Wilson talking for hours. And they would talk, what were they talking about? The past, of course. They were talking about their childhood. And that was how I learned a little bit about the history of St. Maarten. And I was fascinated listening to Emilio and my father just sit there and reminisce. It was more entertaining than any movie I've ever seen. It was better than watching television. It was just the greatest experience for me.
St. Maarten was a rich little island.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Yes, it was. And I mean, it's still rich in history, but a lot of us just don't know the history. We don't know it.
Not teaching it in schools neither. We talk about that.
No, that is a disaster. I'm sorry. That's not right. That is not right.
Yeah.
I mean, why should we learn the history of France and the Netherlands when we don't know our own? I'm sorry. I'm not comfortable with that.
But speaking of history, once I read this book, I always said this. I don't know if you're planning on it, but this has to be made into a screenplay. this has to be made into a screenplay.
Yes.
And if I don't know if anybody's listening out there from Hollywood, but this is an incredible story that should be made into a movie.
Absolutely.
It should be made into a movie.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know who Ray Allen is. He was an NBA star.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. I ran into him.
Shuttleworth. He got game.
Yeah, that's right.
Spike Lee.
Yes. I ran into Ray in November. No, sorry, in September or August. I don't know. In the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. And I was the only one that recognized him. And I'm a retired teacher from the university where he went to school, the University of Connecticut.
Oh, you're Husky. Okay.
I'm a retired professor from there. So I ran up to him, and I when I saw him, I screamed. I said, "Ray Allen!" and he
Security, get this crazy lady away from me!
Thank God he didn't react that way. He should have.
They didn't
but he
tackle you, okay.
They didn't tackle me, thank God. But and he was very sweet. He was really wonderful. But anyway, I said, I'm retired from UConn, and that was my hook.
Your hook to get in.
My second sentence was, and this is my latest book. So I took out my card, I showed it to him, and the first thing he said was, "We need to make this into a movie."
It needs to be a screenplay.
Yes.
And it has, but it has to be done right.
Right.
It can't just be made into a movie just to make a movie.
Right.
It has to be done right.
That's exactly right. Yes.
So I don't know. We got to call Denzel. We got to call somebody.
Please.
But it has to be done right. It has to be done right.
It does. It does.
I can see it in my head now.
There's so much inherent drama in here.
And it's going to tell a whole different angle from
because people, you would never think a Caribbean man is in a black Caribbean man in a concentration camp from St.Maarten. This is crazy.
Sounds like a lie.
Yeah, right.
It does.
Sounds like something Spielberg would do. Spielberg made this up. It ain't happening.
Yeah, well, I almost reacted that way when I first found out when I was 15. I said, "But how is that possible? There were no black people in concentration camps."
Correct.
Because I didn't know.
It's not told to us.
It's not taught to us. That's it's really that's another reason why history is so important. The teaching of history. We need to learn our history. All of us in the African diaspora.
What do you think made your mom tell you in the first place? Like, you know what?
I asked her. I just kept asking. Because you know how children are always asking their parents about their lives before they were born. Right? You always want to know what your parents were doing before you were born. Okay. So I used to ask my mother, and she was very forthcoming. And I would ask my father the same questions. And, he talked a little bit about his childhood in St.Maarten, and then he talked a little bit about coming to New York in the 40s. And,
So there was a big gap.
There was a gap.
Yeah.
I began to realize that there was a gap. Over the years, I began to realize that there was a gap. So I asked him, I said, "Well, what were you doing during the war?" And he would never, ever talk about it. Never, never. So, for years I asked him. And then finally I said, "But, Dad won't talk about the war. Do you know where he was during the war? What happened?" And that was when she told me. And I was so shocked. It was like this huge, incredibly impactful gut punch. I was just, I'll never forget the impact of that. Or where I was in the kitchen with my mother. I was sitting at the kitchen table. I was 15 years old, and I remember the impact of hearing that. It was just so painful.
And she said, "Don't tell your father." Right.
That's right. That's exactly what she said. That's exactly what she said.
So the book fair was canceled.
Yes, it was.
So what are you doing in St.Maarten?
Well, we're going to have a book signing.
Okay.
Yes, Linda Richardson and I.
Shout out to Auntie Linda.
Yes, Linda Richardson, who is somebody who I admire infinitely. She and I are going to have a book signing on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, from 4 to 6 at the St.Maarten Library.
And she has a book as well.
She just did the one with the laws.
This is her book.
Yes, that's the one. Criminal proceedings.
Yes,
I put together for her, actually.
Wow.
Small world.
Oh, you're the graphic designer.
I'm the graphic designer. Yep.
Look at that.
Well, you did a beautiful job.
Oh, thank you very much.
I don't
Fantastic.
see no pictures in here, Super Kid. What graphic?
Well, the cover,
The cover, G.
and then everything else.
And then you took the picture of Linda, right?
I the one that took the picture.
Because everything she did was in Excel. So now from Excel to actually put
I
it
remember when you was doing this.
right.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
I remember when you was doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, I'm one of the editors of the book.
Okay.
And it's been a great privilege and an enormous pleasure to work with Linda. I admire her, as I said, no end. I mean, what she has done for the community in writing this book is absolutely amazing. I mean, this really needed to happen. And it really democratizes the judicial system to an extent that it has never been democratized before. I mean, I'm a language teacher, so I see everything through the prism of language. And that's one reason why this book means so much to me. It's called Trilingual Terminology in Criminal Proceedings, Dutch, English, and Spanish. And I've seen her at work as a translator in the courts.
I've seen her also.
And she's just amazing.
Yeah, I've seen her at work
she's
too. Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's
she's
incredible.
just, she's a great asset.
So where was the book signing at? When and where?
The book signing is going to be at the St.Maarten Library, which is on the Pondville, above the Adolphus Richardson.
Okay, right, yeah.
And it's going to be from 4 to 6 p.m. this coming Tuesday.
Just Tuesday.
Yeah, so Linda is going to be signing copies of her book. I'm going to be signing copies of my book.
Nice.
And anybody can come and ask us questions. We'd be very, very happy to talk to anybody who's interested in coming to the book signing.
And you'll have books available for
We
sale.
will have books available for purchase. Absolutely, yes.
Nice.
We will sign any book that is purchased. I have a few little promotional items that I'm also going to give away with my books. So
Nice.
yeah.
You know, I've been really meaning to meet you because
thank
after I
you.
heard about this and I read about it, and Ralph got it signed for me. So it's been a pleasure that you're here today.
How did you find out she was here, G?
The library called me.
Yes.
Oh, they did?
Marilyn called me. She actually called me during my show, and I was like, why is Marilyn calling me? Doesn't she know I'm on the air? And then she called me again, and then we connected, and then we spoke on the phone.
Yes, you were-
And it's kind of like...
Because Marilyn heard us talking about her, or?
No, actually, Marilyn was, I think she was talking to Ralph.
Oh.
Yes.
And she wanted Ralph to do something, and Ralph said, you know what? You need to go talk to G-Money, because G-Money loves your book.
Loves,
and,
right, okay.
and you need to go speak to G-Money.
Okay.
So that's what Marilyn said.
Ralph still loves us.
Yeah, Ralph still loves us. But we saw him Saturday. We did. On Saturday.
God.
Yeah, so Ralph told Marilyn to contact me,
that's cool.
and yeah, it was really cool. And
I admire Ralph enormously.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He gave me a wonderful interview 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful
He's
for
a good
that.
guy.
Yeah.
So it's like really cool that you're here.
Thank you.
Today, on this date, actually, June 6th, which is... Come on, people. History buffs.
SMG's dad.
You're the history buff.
Dad's
You're the history buff.
anniversary.
No. Today
That's a father not celebrating.
Oh, wait. It was, I read it this morning. Hold on.
Today is...
Was it a D-Day?
Today's D-Day.
Yes. I did. I remember.
Right, that's
today's-
right. President Biden is over there in France.
Today's D-Day. So
Yes,
we were
that's
talking about the
exactly
war.
right.
Yes, I did
That's
mention that this
exactly
morning.
right.
Today's D-Day.
Normandy invasion began.
Correct.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yes.
So it's been a pleasure to have you here, Mary.
Well,
Thank
the
you.
pleasure's
Enjoy your
been
stay.
all mine. Thank you.
Thanks for coming through. I know you can have the
Thank
book signing on
you.
Tuesday at 4.
Tuesday
4
at
to 6.
4 o'clock, 4 to 6 at the library.
At the library, which is right above Adolphus Richardson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Want to give her the question of the day?
Much.
Question of the day, tiebreak Thursday. Choose one, Mary.
Uh-oh.
Sound like she listens to the show. You're like, yup.
It's easy. Truth or dare?
I knew what she's going to say.
Truth.
Truth. Nothing but the
You
truth.
got to say truth.
Okay.
Got to say truth.
All right.
The truth is in the book.
What about you, G? Truth
Same
or dare?
thing, truth.
Truth.
Yeah, I want the truth.
Spoon?
I might not be able to handle the truth, but I want
You can handle it.
Give me the truth. Stop lying.
Spoon says dare.
I said, yeah.
Why dare?
Well, I told him
like
I dare.
trouble.
I told him I dare him to tell the truth.
Oh.
No, you know, people always look for that loophole in the game. I dare you to tell the truth. I could just say, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the end of it right
You
there.
don't know.
You don't have to ask. No, you can't ask me anything. I dare you to tell the truth. Okay, I will. Done.
Next person.
The dare is done. It's done.
Next person. For me, I'll use the truth and S&G.
I'm a truth sayer, so truth.
You the only one with a dare.
I know, right?
I don't trust you people.
This guy
Scared of the
disgusted.
truth.
Scared.
You scared of the truth.
I gotta wait on the book.
What else can we talk about quickly before we leave? Oh, tonight, beginning
NBA
of
playoffs.
NBA NBA finals. That's
You was a
Yes.
teacher at UConn.
Yes.
Any famous basketball players were in your English class that failed?
No, I taught English as a second language.
Oh, the second. Oh,
Second
okay.
language.
Okay.
So they didn't need me.
They didn't need you. Well, some of them actually probably did need you.
Yes.
You hear the way they speak. Okay. All
Well,
right.
Ray Allen wasn't one of them. He was before my time there, but he's very eloquent. In fact,
You keep in
he
touch with him?
No. I would love to be in touch with him.
Instagram, DM, slide up in his DM.
Yeah,
Facebook.
actually, he wrote about my book on Instagram.
Oh, he did?
He did. He bought it. He bought my book. He
Shout
read
out to
it.
Ray.
And I'm infinitely grateful to him for that. I can't believe he did that. He wrote a beautiful review of it.
Wow.
Yeah, on Instagram.
Way to go, Ray.
Yeah, I think sometime early in March he did that. Yeah,
Now,
I didn't even know because I'm not on it.
Oh, so you have, okay.
Now, a lot of
Somebody told me about
a
it.
lot of the pictures in the book, these are what you took when you went to visit.
Most of them.
Most of them.
Most of them. Not all of them, but most of them are pictures I took in Italy and at Mauthausen.
So are you a basketball fan?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, really?
I am not going to miss that first game of the finals.
So you're a Celtics fan then. You got to be because your
Well, I
parents.
suppose so.
Boston.
Yeah,
Boston.
that's true. Yeah.
Whatever.
It should be.
Yeah, I just love the NBA and
Okay. So did you hear the breaking news this morning?
no,
Actually,
no, what?
UConn again. The head coach of UConn has been offered the job of the Lakers. Danny Hurley.
Really?
Yeah.
Danny Hurley, who won the championship again, back to back.
Yeah.
UConn Huskies has been offered the Lakers head coaching job,
Wow.
and they're going to give him a pot of gold.
Yes, I can imagine.
They're giving him everything. So I don't know if he's going to take it. He
Yeah.
still has to accept.
Yeah.
But they are offering him the job.
Well, one thing I'll say about UConn, it has more players in the NBA, the WNBA and the NBA than any other university.
university.
Absolutely, hands down.
Wow.
Yeah,
Gino
that's
Almerera, he just actually signed yesterday. He signed a 5-year deal to stay
Oh,
at UConn to
wow.
coach the women.
Wow.
So Gino stayed.
But the offer sounding sweet. He
Let's
ain't take that.
see. We got a call coming in. Laser, good morning.
Good morning. I just have, I think, two questions.
Sure, go ahead.
You might have said it, but I missed it. The concentration camp, is it still standing currently? Or could you go in there and explore and stuff?
Well, thank you so much for that question. I really appreciate that. Yes, the concentration camp is not only still standing, but it's a wonderful museum. In fact, I just came from there. They had the 79th anniversary of the liberation of the camp on May 5th. So I was there for that celebration. There were about 7,000 people there to celebrate the liberation of the camp, yes. And because every country in Europe that had people that perished in the camp is represented at that celebration every year. So the French delegation invited me to join them, which I did. And then my friends in the French delegation said, well, why don't you contact the U.S. Embassy to let them know that you'll be there? And I did. I thought, well, why would I want to do that? But I did. And the ambassador actually invited me to join the American procession.
Oh, wow.
So I got to meet the U.S. ambassador to Austria. I gave her my book, and she sent me a thank you note saying that she had started to read it. And I know that wasn't your question, sir, but to answer your question, yes, the camp is still standing. It's a magnificent museum. It's a place where you can learn so much about the Nazi era, about the Holocaust, and about that particular camp. And that whole area of Austria has a lot of concentration camps. So, because Mauthausen was not a camp, really. I keep saying it's a camp, but it was a whole system. It had over 40 subcamps. So you can visit the main camp at Mauthausen, which is huge, and then there are smaller subcamps in the area. And that's what I did this time when I was there.
Yeah. What was your second question?
The cost of the book.
Oh yeah, the book is $30.
$100.
No.
After this exclusive interview, yes, sir. Price gone up.
$50 if you want it signed.
It's $30, and Linda Richardson's book is $35. So those books will be available. Again, we're going to be signing those books on Tuesday from 4 to 6 at the library. So we would hope to see you there, sir.
Yeah, I'll do my best to be there.
Wonderful. Thank you so
The
much.
last question I had was when you were walking through it, what was your emotion knowing that your father was there? was it like you're living through him in a bit, like to see the surroundings and the area, even when you touch the walls and stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I saw a lot of the places in the camp that he talked about, and that was very emotional. I found the barrack that he was assigned to on his concentration camp records. Barrack number 9 is indicated. Now, it's no longer standing. Most of the prisoner barracks are no longer standing. However, the places where they once stood are all marked. So you can find them. And I walked in the space that was the barrack where my father was a prisoner, where he probably was. I mean, he was assigned there. I have no proof that he actually was in that barrack, but he was assigned to that barrack. So just to give myself the opportunity of possibly walking in his footsteps, I did walk in that barrack. And that was emotionally very, very intensive, but I felt the need to do it. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for the information. I'll see you on Tuesday.
All right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right.
You're welcome.
Later, Andre. Take it easy.
Thanks, man.
No problem.
Yeah,
All
some of
right.
our listeners even found Ray Allen's post with your book just now. They just sent it to us. So you have people researching.
That's amazing.
No, they just want to see she a liar. That's what some people ain't.
Right.
They just want fact check.
Wait,
They got this woman and later one talking about she no Ray Allen. Yeah, they used to play one-on-one.
I ain't see no post.
She a liar, man. Now they find out the truth. Now they gonna spread the word. I should listen to this lady and later, man. She did the book sign. She know reality. She know reality.
See, you post about on Instagram.
Wow.
So another question, because we've seen throughout history, after these concentration camps were closed, a lot of these Nazi soldiers and whatever, they got persecuted, either to death or long prison sentences. Did any of them?
They ran and hide in South America.
Yes,
Right.
that's right.
Now, did any of them get persecuted after, like the ones from your father's camp, or well, not camp like you said, but from where your father was? Do you know of any history of some of them being persecuted after?
I don't, but I there's a very famous picture of the commandant of the camp. He was killed somehow, I think maybe trying to escape. But yeah, there's a very famous picture of him lying dead, maybe in an attempt to escape the Americans.
Well,
or something,
the movie Zone of Interest, which is about Auschwitz.
Yes.
It's you should watch it. But he was actually caught. So if you go through history, he was actually caught. He went to trial, and then he was executed. Public execution. Certain people were invited to go watch him be executed.
Wow.
I think he was executed in the camp.
Yeah, because remember he was one of the lieutenants that was basically the catalyst to the gassing. He was one of the people that signed off on the actual gassing chambers.
Wow.
We'll put it on your to-do list. Zone of Interest.
Yes.
It's an incredible
I have heard of that movie.
Incredible
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes.
All right. But Mary Louise Romney-Schaab, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
It's been a wonderful, wonderful pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure's been all mine. I can't thank any of you enough. Thank you so much. This has been just an indescribable pleasure.
And maybe like this book should be taught in school.
Yeah.
Should be something that should be on the reading list.
In St.Maarten.
In St.Maarten of all
every school library.
This should be on the school list. So who's the Minister of Education?
At this point, who is it? Lyndon Lewis. Could change in a few months, but Lyndon Lewis.
Could change today.
Before you leave office in August, put this in the curriculum. That's the word I'm looking for in the school curriculum. It should be in the school curriculum.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
It's about St.Maarten, man. It's amazing story.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
I am so grateful to all of you.
Yeah.
God
So
bless
that's it
you.
for us today.
That's it.
G-Money coming up next, AMP and Work Show, followed by the cut creator DJ Outkast.
Outcasts are number one.
And then Sagan. Do her thing, and then we'll be back tomorrow from 6 to 10.
Doing it all over again.
Today's actually our anniversary also. Today's actually
Me and you?
No. The morning show anniversary.
It's our anniversary. And he'll hug you. He'll hug you.
Meaning the show's anniversary. Today is 7 years of 666.
Wow.
Yeah.
7 years you're on the air.
No. So
Look, Mary, pack it up and say, look at these heathens. 666. That's what he said.
666.
And you hear the sarcasm.
Mary said, I got it.
So she said, look. Pack it up. You're like, I done it.
What a day to start.
the Nazi era compared to 666. No. I don't know what he's getting into.
Today.
No.
He's so happy about 666.
So a few years ago, 7 years ago, actually, I started putting out some cryptic messages, and it just said 666. People got scared, and they were like wondering what was going on. So basically, the show used to be from 7 to 10. So 7 years ago, on the 6th of June, so the 6th of the 6th month, is when the show started to at 6 a.m.
At 6 a.m.
Yeah, so we started the show an hour earlier.
It started at 6 on 6th of 6.
Check it out. And he did it on D-Day. Old co-host. He did it on that mic, stupid man. I know he's brilliant, bro.
Smack man.
Well, you are smacked.
You know what? There we go. Big old spoon.
I need know this for real until listen to the show.
I get to call it.
And tomorrow is Rummer's anniversary when he started on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he
When
started
he
the day
start,
after.
when he come here and he didn't,
And he never left after that.
Start.
Yeah, it really was an official start.
So big up to Rummer one time. All right, we go.
We done gone.
Tomorrow we're scheduled to be at Big Daddy's. All right,
12.
at 12 o'clock.
12.
So you guys could come on out, hang with us. We're going to be doing a live broadcast. If you haven't tried out Big Daddy's yourself, you can head on over there. We'll be down there between 12 and 2, talking about, maybe we might even try some stuff.
What kind of stuff?
I don't know, just stuff on the menu. Whenever we go to Big Daddy, he just throws stuff together like, listen, taste this, taste that.
Yeah, I'm too full now. Stop.
Yeah, so you might have the opportunity to try
Just make something random.
try one of his random experiments.
God, you can't beef milkshake.
You never know with special care.
Stop it.
With Milo. With corned beef milkshake with Milo.
And then put some Ovaltine crumbs in it.
No.
Come on, stop it. Stop that bubble guts now.
Anyway,
Maybe right now I could have leave. I had a chance, I could have leave.
so wait, one more question for Mary.
Yes,
So
yes.
once your father was found by the U.S. Navy, how long did it take for him to get from?
It was the Marines.
From
The Marines.
Oh, I think the U.S. Army liberated
Okay.
camp. Yeah.
So how long did it take for him to get from Austria to back to the United
Took a
States?
while because it's in the book. It's
yeah. That's something that
because he went to Italy first. He went somewhere. No, he went somewhere first.
Yeah, well, I think he must have spent some time in the Netherlands first.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I always asked him about that. He never answered very much.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something that has remained a mystery for me. I don't know exactly how long he was in Europe after the war.
Right.
I
That
really
first
don't
phone
know.
call was to Staten Island.
And he made that phone call while he was in Europe.
I don't
Oh,
think people couldn't phone from there in those days. They didn't have
Really?
transatlantic phone.
Also, he had to be probably in the United States when he made the call.
Well, I think he just showed up.
it
I mean,
says
I
so.
I
Where
think
it says.
she was kind of expecting him, or I don't know, somehow.
your mom?
No. His aunt.
Oh, his aunt.
His aunt was in
And Staten Island.
in
That's what
Staten Island.
the
Yeah.
first call he made.
Yeah, I don't think it was a call. I think that he
just showed up.
I think he just went there because he knew that she was there.
He sent a
I
letter.
think,
So it was like
yeah, I think he sent a message to her through one of the other prisoners,
Something like
who,
that.
yeah, who lived in Staten Island
Okay.
or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, so at least they knew he was alive.
Yes, so that they would
okay.
know
Word
that.
out.
Yeah, he was very concerned about letting them know that he was still alive because he wanted his parents to know, and he knew that she would let them know.
Okay.
She would send a letter to them in Aruba or Curacao or wherever they were.
Right.
I think the mother was in Curacao and the father was in Aruba. So I'm sure that he told he sent a message through another person that
Something
he met.
like that. Yeah.
And then that person was going to Staten Island, so he said, "Please
Tell
tell
them.
my aunt."
Mr. Biden back.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And then your dad and your mom met after he came back.
Absolutely.
Okay, so after.
They didn't meet until around 1947 or 1948. And then they got married in 1950.
Okay.
In 1950, and then I was born in 1950.
So the only only person basically he told this to was probably your mom at the time.
That's right.
So that's how she knew about it.
right.
But did he go into detail to your mom?
No.
So you're the only person he went to detail it.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. Yeah. He only gave her a couple of sentences, and he let her know that he had suffered. I mean, because, for example, I remember she told me this. She said, well, she said he suffered greatly. They had no heat in the winter, and I said, no heat, and I mean, not thinking that it was Austria. Austria, that's the Alps.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had the Winter Olympics in Austria.
Yeah.
That's how cold it gets.
Yeah.
It's an extremely cold place in winter. So, they suffered horribly. A lot of people died from exposure.
But it's even amazing after all that whole ordeal that he went through that he was still able to at least fall in love with someone, because after something an ordeal like that, traumatizing, I don't even think I'll be able to even
like leave me
give
alone.
yourself to someone emotionally.
function.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Me chose you for them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Thing.
No, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. It is amazing. But I think that he was just anxious to start a normal life, to just settle down and work for pay, because he was enslaved in the camp.
Right.
Everybody in that camp was enslaved. I mean, the Nazis enslaved all of their prisoners pretty much, because there was a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
There was always a lot of work to do.
And the fact that at least maybe you didn't see that it affected his personality. He didn't really lash out, or he wasn't a very violent or aggressive person.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So he kept a lot of that in, basically.
Right? But it shows you the power of the human brain. Like, people don't understand. We can compartmentalize
Right.
trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it happens to a lot of people. A lot of people. And I mean, our people, especially having been so oppressed for so long, we've had to experience a lot of trauma. So, it's not only those of us who have experienced war, but there are many forms of trauma.
Right. And like you said, it's crazy too how it passes down from generation to generation. Even though I personally didn't experience it, but it just passes down through lineage.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and that's where we have to come with this breaking the generational curse.
That's right.
And all of that. So,
exactly.
yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed the experience of talking with you here today. I don't feel that it's
We're better than Ralph's interview, right?
Oh my God.
It's okay, Mary. You can say it.
Just had to.
You can say it.
To me, it's not an interview; it's a conversation, and I just love it. I've loved this experience. I love speaking with Ralph. He was absolutely wonderful. That was one of the best interviews I've ever had in my life. My interview with Ralph, but this is.
I'm just kidding.
No, but I'm telling you, I've really enjoyed this. Not only am I grateful to you for the opportunity to talk about this, and I want to encourage everybody out there to embark on oral history projects with your elders. Sit down and spend time with them. You can't imagine what they would love to tell you. It doesn't have to be about trauma. It can be about all the good things, about their successes. Yeah. Maybe nobody has ever asked them about their successes. So, don't be afraid to spend time with your elders. There's a lot of self-discovery in the discovery of your family history. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
I would talk to my father a lot, about, living in Aruba, living in Curacao.
That's wonderful. I'm glad you did that.
And he would always, because we always connect with sports, and he would always tell me about all these baseball players, baseball players I've never heard of. Right. And they were all from St. Thomas and St. Croix. Yes. And he was talking about how they used to sit in Aruba and they used to get the radio stations from the army, from the army and the Navy. And they used to carry baseball games.
Wow.
And how they used to sit and listen to Jackie Robinson play. Yeah, he used to sit with his mother, and they would listen to the I won't say Merc, but the military radio, armed force radio.
Yes.
And they would sit and listen to the Dodger games. So that's why today you have all these Arubians and Curacalinas that love the Dodgers. And I could never understand why my father was a Dodger fan. the Dodgers are in Los Angeles. Why are you a fan of the Dodgers?
Because there's a link there.
Because
There's
of
a
Jackie
link.
Robinson.
Yeah.
But you would never know that if you didn't take the time to sit and talk to
my
him.
father, and he
So
would
good
tell
for
me.
you.
So I was
God
like,
bless you
why?
for doing
So
that.
now I know why all these Arubians and
Yes.
Russelinians are Dodger
Yes.
fans.
And also, I think it was last week. You weren't here, G, but I read the story about a lot of the records from the Negro leagues has now been added to Major League
Well,
Baseball.
I talked about it 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
When they were going to compile this,
Right.
So basically, the commissioner said, you know what, we are accepting that the Major League, the Negro leagues, were part of the Major.
That's right,
because they
yes.
couldn't play. That doesn't mean
That's
we can't look at their records
Right.
and what they did.
That's right.
So 3 years ago, I talked about this on my show that they were going to do it, and 3 years later, they finally combed through
Everything.
statistic, every record they found. They added hits, they added doubles, they added triples, and now Josh
Wow.
Gibson is the all-time
It
leader.
broke
when it comes
a lot of standing records in
when it
Major League
comes to
Baseball.
slugging
Were
percentage.
broken.
They broke
Yes.
it because of
Yes.
Josh Gibson
Yes.
is now the all-time leader when it comes to career batting average over Ty Cobb. He's now
Wow.
so all these records, so all the numbers, including Jackie Robinson and players who played in the Negro Leagues and in the Major
Yes.
Leagues, their
Yes, he did.
stats went up.
Yes.
So a lot of people were saying that, that the Negro Leagues aren't comparable to the Major Leagues.
That's exactly what they were saying.
They were saying it was like a minor league.
Right.
But that's not true.
That's not true. Right.
That's not true.
That is not true.
Because the Negro Leagues actually played the Major Leagues. Like they used to do what they call barnstorming games, or exhibition games.
Yes.
So the Negro Leagues would play the Major League Baseball
they would
players, the
clobber
Babe
them.
Ruths, the
Yes,
Lou
they did.
Gehrig's, the Ted. They would play them, and they came up with about 53% of those games were won
by the Negro
by
League.
the Negro League.
That is amazing.
Now, if you also look at the first 20 Negro League players to make it into the major leagues, the first 20, 4 of them won Rookie of the Year.
Wow.
You have, I think, 7 of them won MVP.
Wow.
And 11 of them are Hall of Famers.
Wow.
Nice.
These are the first 20 Negro League players who went to the major leagues. 11 of them are Hall of Famers.
That is amazing.
And you have Josh Gibson, you have Satchel Paige. Satchel, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, I forgot his name, Chrissy Matthews. Was it Chrissy Matthews? One of them said that, if Satchel Paige was on our team, he said we would clinch the pennant by June.
Wow. So early in the season.
He said we would clinch the pennant. I forget what it was, a white American pitcher, one of the great pitchers. I think it was Christy Matthews, one of them. He said, or Walter Johnson. He said we would win the pennant by June.
Wow.
And come back in October to play the World Series.
Wow.
Sit down,
You can sit down for the whole
and come back. That's how good Satchel Paige didn't make it into the major leagues until he was 40.
Right.
Wow.
That's right.
So he was 41 years old.
That's right. Yeah.
41 years old.
Yeah.
And this is one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Babe Ruth, everybody would tell you, Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams. They asked Ted Williams, the great Ted Williams, who was the most difficult pitcher you ever faced? Satchel Paige.
Wow.
Ted Williams said Satchel
That is
Paige,
amazing.
the most difficult pitcher he's ever faced.
Wow.
And you have Josh Gibson, who's hit more home runs than Babe Ruth. Josh Gibson was one of the great. His nickname was the Black Babe Ruth.
Wow.
Yeah, his nickname was the Black Babe Ruth. You have Josh Gibson, you have Choo Choo Walker, you have all these great players, and now
Exactly.
finally recognized in Major League Baseball.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but finally,
Finally.
I mean,
Finally.
why did it have to take that long? I mean, that's not
Like you said, the whole thing with the blank slate, they wanted to write our history for
exactly,
us. Yeah.
exactly,
And
exactly.
You know what I look at? One thing that changed a lot, and it's sad to say, it was the incident with what's his name?
George Floyd?
George Floyd. George
Yeah.
Floyd.
Yeah.
George Floyd
Yeah.
changed a lot of things
That's right.
when it comes to the Grammys being accepting and changing when it comes to African American music,
Right.
Yes.
baseball, sports,
Yes.
head coaches in the NFL.
Yes.
George Floyd.
Yeah.
Even down to voicing characters. and all
Voicing
these-
characters. George
Yeah.
Floyd.
But why did somebody have to die?
Right.
I don't know, but you go through history, it's
Yeah.
always like
I mean,
that.
That's right.
Yeah, it happens
That's
worldwide.
right.
Even here in St. Maarten.
always in history.
In St. Maarten,
Somebody-
you complain about an area or something, and nothing happens until someone well known, or someone passes away, or someone well known passes away from it.
It's throughout history.
Yeah, you
Change
can
doesn't happen until
until
someone, someone
unfortunately
passes away, or someone gave their life for a cause or something. That's
a sad reality.
Sad reality.
Yeah,
Sad reality.
absolutely.
But yeah. So good stuff.
Yeah.
Sad realities. We gotta go.
Did you give a snap already?
Not yet.
Oh.
Big Obi Spoon.
I ain't got no snap. Don't ask me.
Leave us off with a. Oh, Mary, would you like to leave us off with something nice and positive?
There you go. Your ring.
That ain't nothing.
Well,
or any quote that you live by.
Well, I can't think of a quote that I live by, but I really, I'm just, it's so gratifying for me to be here in St. Maarten every time I come, because these are my roots. Mm-hmm. My roots are here. And I just love being among my people. I love my people. I love the island. And being here every year is just one of the greatest pleasures of my life. And people like you make it an even greater pleasure.
Appreciate it.
I mean, when I see young people like you, I have a lot of hope for the future. And I admire you, I appreciate you, and I love you just infinitely.
Yeah, I guess Mary didn't listen to the hour before. All the craziness that we do. No, but I'm just kidding.
There's a quote you have in your book. I can't find it. It's from, I don't know if you can remember it. It's from Pope Francis.
Oh, yeah.
There was a quote that Pope Francis said. I know it's somewhere in the beginning of
your book. I know exactly what you mean. Let me see if I can find it. But it's, here it is. A people without memory has no future. That was Pope Francis.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Band moving. See you guys tomorrow.